Hello, welcome back to the YarnNYarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all the places you can find me should be linked in the description box below this video. Here on the channel you'll find me chatting about my adventures in knitting, spinning, crochet and weaving, all of the fibre related things. Welcome to my April making wrap up video. So I'm going to be spending some time chatting about all of the projects that I worked on during the month of April. I have some knitting and some spinning to share with you in this episode. And I also have an acquisitions segment again at the end of this episode. At the end of last month, the fabulous festival, Fibre Festival here in Wales, Wonderwall, was held, and I went along for the day and I made a couple of purchases. I also spent a weekend down in Devon visiting my brother, and I found a couple of things to purchase down there as well, my little Devon souvenirs. So I shall share those with you at the end. I didn't make a Wonderwall vlog this year, which I hope you don't mind. I've done a few vlogs about Wonderwall in the past and I'll try and link at least one of them above, but if you are interested and you want to see more about that festival, if you just search Wonderwall on my channel you'll find a couple of videos there. If you want to find out a little bit more about this year's Wonderwall, I know that Zoe of Pins and Needles posted 3 vlogs about her experience vending at Wonderwall this year. I've also seen Helen of Mousy Makes has just put up a video about her Wonderwall experience. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet because we've been so busy with family stuff over the last couple of weeks. I'm a little bit behind on my video watching. So yeah, there's plenty of Wonderwall content there. I think Anita of Gaga Knits put up a little chat about her Wonderwall experience, as has Anne of No Excuses Knitting Podcast. She had a little chat about her Wonderwall experience at the end of one of her recent episodes as well. So there's plenty of Wonderwall content out there from other channels should you want to get a little bit of a taster of what the fabulous Fibre Festival here in Wales is like. I decided not to get my camera out this year. I was only there for a few hours on Sunday and I had lots of things to do, including catching up with a bunch of lovely friends. I tried to squeeze in a little bit of shopping time as well, so there just wasn't enough time to make a vlog this year. I've been trying to record this video for the last couple of days. It's a couple of weeks into May already and we've had some lovely family time at the beginning of May, which included a weekend away. And since we've got back, my little cat Newt, I've got a little ginger and white cat, she has been very needy and keeps interrupting me anytime I sit down in a place that is anywhere other than the living room in the house, where she likes to sit up on the sofa next to us and get lots of fuss. So I'm hoping I can record this relatively interruption free, but we'll see. If there's lots of pauses and slight changes of angles, it's probably because I've been interrupted by the cat. Let's not get distracted by that. Let's chat about the things that I worked on in April. I'm going to start with spinning, and I've got 2 finished spins to share with you. I'll share one now and one at the very end of this segment because it leads nicely into my knitting project. So the first one is I managed to finish up my yarns, which will soon hopefully be cast on and made into some socks. And I've got a whole video up about this spin on the channel, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but just in case you're only here for the roundup content, I will share it with you today. So this is a blend of Blueface Leicester and Alpaca, and I blended these up on my drum carder and spun them up. I'm taking part in the lovely Carrie of My Wool Mitten is hosting, or was hosting, a spin to knit socks. The official part of the make along has finished, but Carrie did mention this is a go at your own pace, kind of just to inspire folks to spin and knit for socks. So I am a little bit behind where everyone else is, but I shall soon be casting on my socks finally. And I was inspired to make this blend by Carrie herself. She has quite a lot of videos up on her channel about how she likes to spin for socks, and it gave me the inspiration to pair together a beautiful quantity of alpaca that was gifted to me by the lovely Helen of Mossvale Alpacas. And Helen is a lovely member of our community. She lives over in Tasmania, and she very kindly sent me some fibre from her own flock of alpacas. I do have a slight sensitivity to alpaca though, so I've been trying to avoid sort of using it just as 100% alpaca, because I know that will probably set my sort of slight allergy off. But this spin gave me the perfect opportunity to use some of it. I paired it with some natural dyed Blueface Leicester that I had in a fibre club from Nellie and Eve. The lovely Helen of Nellie and Eve is a natural dyer based here in Wales. So yeah, I blended up a few different colours and I managed to achieve about a sport weight yarn. I was aiming more for a DK, but I think I've got sport for the most part. There's probably some bits that are veering into DK double knit territory, but I'm hoping for a nice cosy pair of socks from these. So I need to find some time to cast that on, and hopefully I will do that soon. The second project that I have been working on is a continuation of a project that I've had on the go since December. And back in December I did a lovely swap with my friend Lisa, and we gifted each other for Advent a package every day which contained 20 grams of fibre. And for me, Lisa made 24 bats, little mini bats of fibre, various different blends, various different colours, and I have been slowly making my way through those bats. I've been trying to spin roughly 15 minutes every day, but I haven't managed it all the time. But I have got to the point now where I need to wind off my singles. This is my little basket full of all my support spindles. I'm not going to be able to show this very well. In my last wrap-up episode I called this my fleet of spindles, and the lovely Mel mentioned that she thought my collection of spindles was more like an armada than a fleet, and I can't really deny that. I've got a lot of spindles in here, and these are just my support spindles. I also own quite a lot of drop spindles. I love spindle spinning, what can I say? So yes, my support spindles are full. I'm not going to sit here and show you all of these quantities, but I will show you the yarns once they're finished. So at some point in the next couple of weeks I'm hoping to have a little bit of a plying party so that I can free up these spindles for future spins, and I should have a lovely collection of finished yarns to share with you soon. So there's just a little selection of what I've got on the spindles. There's been all sorts of different fibres and blends. It's been a real joy spinning some of these. Some of them have been a little bit more of a challenge to spin than others, but I've definitely learnt a lot along the way about what I like, and some of the things that maybe are not that I don't like, but some things that maybe aren't as compatible with my support spindles. Hopefully next month I will have a collection of finished yarns to share with you. I've only got a few more bats left to spin up, so with any luck in the next couple of months that project, my whole Advent spin project, will be finished, which will be quite exciting, because then I will have to try and make a decision as to whether I'm going to use all of those yarns in one project or split them up into different projects. So that will be some fun thinking and planning time in my future. That's one spin on my treader wheel, my Haldane, that was the sock yarn, the alpaca, Blueface Leicester. One spin on my spindles, my sport spindles, my advent calendar, and then the third spin, which is a finished spin, I managed to complete on my e-spinner. So all of my different types of spinning tool have been used in the last month, which brings me a lot of joy. I managed to spin through this beautiful bright orange, and as you can see, it's already wound up into a cake because it's one of my ongoing projects. So this will lead us nicely into the next segment, which will be knitting. But before we go on to that, I shall just let you know a little bit more about this fibre. So this was a lovely quantity of fibre that was gifted to me by another member of our community, Christine. And Christine sent this to me, not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before, and it's 100% merino from Ashford in the pumpkin pie colourway. I decided to pull this out to start a specific spin to knit project. So I spun this up and I two-plyed it. Did I two-ply it? Yes, on my e-spinner. The funny thing is, this will make you laugh, I think I ended up with about 90 grams, and I didn't think anything of it. Have I got my little card in here which I noted down? No, I've got the original packaging, but I did note down on a card or a piece of paper somewhere. Oh, here we go. 92 grams and 346 meters I ended up with. And I didn't think anything of it, because sometimes you get these sort of bags of fibre that say they're 100 grams and they might be 1 or 2 grams more or 1 or 2 grams short. And there might be occasions where I lose the odd bit of fibre, where perhaps there are some inconsistencies in processing. So I didn't think anything of the fact that I only ended up with 92 grams until when we were tidying up downstairs ahead of our family visitors arriving. I've got a little corner downstairs where I've got a wheel, a sort of 3-tiered trolley where I keep my sort of current works in progress that I'm sort of concentrating on for the month, and I've got my e-spinner in there too. And as I was tidying up that corner, I found another bump of this orange fluff that I hadn't spun up. So when I separated my braid into 2 and then started stripping it down to spin, I must have misplaced a little bump of it. So there's a few more grams of this left downstairs to spin up, so I'll spin that up separately. If this had been a variegated colour or something like that, then I might have been a bit miffed, but because it's a solid colour, it's not really going to matter if it gets spun up separately. But I will spin it up because I'm not sure how much of this I'll need. I might need the whole of the quantity of fibre that I have to complete the project that I'm knitting with it. That was kind of a me rolling my eyes moment when I realised that due to my untidiness in my little craft corner, I had not in fact finished the entire spin as I had thought, but I still have a little bit left. But I'm counting it as a finish because for all intents and purposes it's done. There's only a couple more grams left to spin, and yeah, it turned out absolutely beautifully. And I've got a picture over on Instagram. I took a picture of this skein in amongst the bluebells in our garden when they were at their sort of peak this year. They've sadly started to fall back already, but the lovely pumpkin pie colourway against the bluebells just looked so lovely, and this fibre has such a beautiful sheen to it. It was a joy to spin, and it has been a joy to start knitting with. So with that little segue, let's move over to the knitting projects that I worked on during the month of April. If you've followed the channel for a little while, you'll know that I'm someone who likes and enjoys having lots of works in progress on the needles to pick from. It does mean sometimes that some of my projects languish for a while, and when I say a while, that could be several years. But I really do enjoy having the choice, and actually a project that I worked on almost to the exclusion of most other things, and which I'll share later, has really reinforced to me how much I dislike monogamous knitting. And that's not a judgment or an aspersion. I'm not casting aspersions on anyone who is a monogamous knitter. I just find it a real slog if I try and make myself only work on one thing through to completion. So I am kind of envious of a lot of you who enjoy working that way, and you get sort of things on your needles and off your needles in a fairly short time scale. But working that way does not personally bring me joy. I like to be able to chop and change and go where my will takes me and work on the things that bring me pleasure in that moment. And yeah, trying to force myself to work on just one thing is not enjoyable for me. Circle back round to the point. I like to have a lot of works in progress, but if I'm not careful, I can use that as an excuse to procrastinate. So if you're new to the channel, every month for the last couple of years, I've employed a sort of a bit of game of chance, added a random element into my making, and I've got a series of prompts that I randomly pick from to help me focus on a few projects during the month. And in the month of April, I picked the mood prompt, which means I can work on whatever takes my fancy, and usually that's an excuse to work on lots of different things. So the Ashford pumpkin pie colourway has already been started to get knit up, and it's a project that I used the mood prompt excuse to work on. So there's not too much to show, and it's really odd showing this because the construction is just so much fun, but it's just in the interim looks like just kind of some weird piece of knitting. So this is my project in progress. Can you tell what it is? If you are a long time follower, then you might know what this is already, because I cast this on as one of the projects for our 12 cast-ons this year. And the 12 cast-ons is something I do at the end of each year going into the beginning of the next year. I spend 12 consecutive days casting on 12 new projects to hopefully set myself up for my year's worth of making. And I cast on day 4 of our cast-on party this year. I started a pattern by James N. Watts, and it's called the Sunburst. And it's a cropped sort of t-shirt. It's knit in this modular way in sections. And you start with this, I'll get the other one because it's easier to show you. Start with this central square, and then you pick up around the edge and you knit out in rays, the pattern calls it. So you're basically knitting out various shapes until you end up with your square or your rectangle for the front and back of your garment. So as soon as I finished, or thought I'd finished, my Ashford fibre, I decided I needed just to get on and knit up the first segment of my Sunburst. And this first segment didn't take long at all, and as I say, it's really hard to kind of envision what this is, but basically I have knit sort of the top. So this is the neckline, this will be the shoulder, and then this sort of centre is the middle of the front panel on this garment. Like I say, it's kind of difficult to really share. I've stopped there because I've finished the first sort of wedge, the first ray as the pattern calls it, and I need to now spin up my second lot of hand spun that I'm going to be using in that top. And I have started it. I didn't bring it up to show you this time because it's on one of the bobbins on my e-spinner downstairs, and I didn't want to faff around sort of dismantling that to share with you. But once I've spun up at least one of the bobbins, I will share that with you. So yeah, a little bit of progress made on my Sunburst. So yeah, a teeny tiny bit of progress, but some progress nonetheless. I'm not sure when we'll next see that project, so I thought I would just bring it out and share my my little bit of progress on that. So far that top is living in this project bag, which is a beautiful gift from Anne of No Excuses Knitting. When I met her at Wonderwall, not this year but last year, she gifted me this lovely little project bag, and I think at some point my project will outgrow this bag, but so far this is enough to contain what I've got, so I'm going to keep it in there for a little bit longer. While we're on the subject of the mood prompt for my making, I've got 3 more projects that I worked on using that prompt as an excuse. One is a finished object, and it's my dappled light shawl, and the video that I posted just before this one is a vlog detailing the making of this shawl, so I'm not going to chat about it too much here, but it is a pattern by Carrie Bostic Hogue. It was a project that I cast on, I think, on day 10 of our 12 cast-ons this year. So one of my 12 cast-ons projects is finished. Yay! Yay! That's my little, don't know what that is, but my little celebration. Whoop, whoop. And I used some handspun yarn for this. Some beautiful yarn. Again, the fibre was from Nellie and Eve. There's lots of Nellie and Eve happening in this episode. It's just a coincidence. So this was another quantity of fibre that I received in the fibre club when I belonged to that a couple of years ago, and I spun it up as some singles yarn. Originally I was planning on weaving with this yarn, but it sat languishing in my stash for a little while, and this year I pulled it out when we did the 12 cast-ons, decided to make this shawl, and I'm really happy with how this pattern and this yarn came together. This pattern is a beautiful combination of these garter stitch sections, and they're separated by a combination. It's a bit difficult to tell in this light, but there are some drop stitch sections and this panel of eyelets that kind of separate those garter panels. And yeah, it was just a lovely knit, and I love the subtle shifting of the colours. It's mostly a sort of grey-brown colour, but there are also some flecks of pink and some mustard in this as well. The inspiration for the dyeing of the fibre was hyacinth bulbs. So if you imagine a bulb, a flower bulb, before you plant it, I think this captures the colours that you get in those bulbs quite well. And I was really pleased to be able to use this. This is such a lightweight shawl. I had 100 grams of fibre and I used pretty much every single inch of the yarn that I had. I had less than a metre left after I'd cast off. So I was really happy just to be able to use as much of that yarn as I possibly could. So yes, Dappled Light is finished. One of my 12 cast-ons is finished. And if you'd like to know more about the evolution of that project, then I've just posted a video about that. So you can hop back and find out more if you would like to do so, if you haven't already seen that one. And then I've got 2 works in progress to share with you that again also came out as an excuse in the mood prompt, my excuse to work on anything that I like. And the first one of my projects is not even on my official works in progress list. I need to add this to my Ravelry project page because I've got a vanilla sock on the needles. This is some absolutely gorgeous yarn from Attic Spin Dye, and I purchased this I think either at the beginning of this year or the end of last year, and my intention was to knit a pair of gift socks for a friend of mine. And when the yarn arrived and I cast it on, I love this gorgeous colourway. Did I already say it's called the Spice Market? But as I was knitting it, my friend wasn't coming to mind. It wasn't the colour that I wanted to knit for the person that it was going to. So I put the project to one side and thought I'll just come back to it and knit myself a pair of socks at some point. And this last few weeks I ended up going to the cinema and I needed some easy knitting. I do have one pair of vanilla socks on the needles, which are my gingerbread socks, which was another one of my 12 cast-ons, but those socks are at the point where I need to start decreasing for the toe imminently, so I didn't want to take those with me because I knew they wouldn't keep me busy through the entire length of the movie that I was watching. But at the time I picked this up, it was literally just a cuff and I think maybe an inch or two of plain knitting, so I decided just to pick these up on a whim and take them to the cinema with me. And oh, this is such a glorious colourway. It's got this beautiful sort of chartreusey green with these pinks and purples, almost a kind of indigo colour. So yeah, I'm going to add this as a project to my Ravelry project page, and I will be carrying on with this sometime soon. James's gran has requested a pair of knitted socks from me, and I tried to knit her a pair of socks before, but I was given the wrong information about her foot size. And I ended up knitting a pair of socks that was way too small. So I'm thinking that rather than knit myself another pair of socks, I might give these to James's gran. She's the same size foot as me, so that should hopefully make it easier for me to whip through these. And as she has requested them, and I've got these on the needles already, partially started, then I think these might go to her. And then I should have enough left over once I've finished these to make another pair of socks for myself with the leftovers if I use contrast heels, toes and cuffs. So I think that's my plan. I'm going to keep these handy and work on them and then gift them to James's gran. They might be slightly brighter than she was anticipating, but the aim at the moment is to get a pair of socks that fit her, and once we get the fit for her right, then I can make more pairs for her in the future if she wants solid colours or something a bit less bright and fun. But hopefully she will enjoy these. Finally, for my collection of mood projects, I pulled out and worked on my Scrah Bucket, which is a knitted bag pattern by the lovely Tracy of Passionate Spinner. And I took this away with me when we went to visit my brother in Devon. And my intention was to take it to Wonderwall and have this as my knitting at Wonderwall project. And I did take it, but I didn't get my knitting out all day. So that was a bit of a fail. And it also meant that I thought I might finish this project last month, but I didn't quite get there. In fact, I've still got quite some knitting to go. But I have knit to the point where I put my channel in for the drawstring. So the sort of outside of the bag, if you will, is finished. Again, it's a bit difficult to show, but this is the circular base of the bag. And then this bit from here to here is the side. I've got the channel for the drawstring at the top. So now I'm going to be knitting an inner. So I'm basically knitting the same sort of shape again. And that will become the inside of my bag. And as I say, I'd hoped that I might finish it last month, but I ran out of time, didn't happen, but that's a-okay. This is such a fun pattern. You use 2 strands of fingering weight yarn held together. So I raided my stash and I pulled out all of the things that I could find that had some form of orange in them. They also have, some of these also have other colours. I've got some with blue, some with yellow, it's got some grey and some really sort of light tones, but it also has some orange tones in there as well. So yeah, I just raided my stash and have been knitting through these quantities and just swapping out one strand when I run out. So a great stash buster this. A bit tricky to show you what it's going to be like once it's finished. That's not too bad actually. That's not too bad. You can see the bottom, the sides and the top there. I hope to finish that the next time I'm able to pull this project out of the project bag, and that is living in this fun tartan bag, which was a gift from my friend Jeanette. So yeah, scrap bucket, and those are the 4 projects that I worked on under the guise of knitting for the mood prompt. For last month's dice rolls, I also got the socked prompt, and I decided to pull out a project from deep hibernation, my Selbu socks. And I have a slight tale of woe to share with you for this sock, because when I'm holding this up to you, I think it probably looks like I've made barely any progress. When I picked this up before, I was kind of around about here. I'd done like 1 repeat of the pattern. As I mentioned earlier, there's one project which I will share next, which took up a lot of my knitting time. And towards the end of the month, I realised I'd really only knit a little bit on my other projects. But I had knit quite significantly more on this project than it looks right now, because I picked this up on the last day of the month and I was starting to put in the gusset increases, and then I had another look at the pattern and I realised that I'd misread the instructions, and I should have started my gusset increases much sooner than I had actually done so, and the sock therefore was going to end up to be way too long. So I had to rip a load of this out, which was a bit heartbreaking because I felt like I was finally making a bit of progress on this. So yeah, on the final day of the month, I ripped out a good few inches of knitting and put this project back on the needles and started the gusset increases again. And hopefully they're in about the right place now. I'm giggling so I don't cry. I am enjoying working the chart for this, but there's just something with me and Skein Deer designs that the projects that I've knit don't go smoothly. I had the same with my Otra sweater where things just didn't go to plan, and now I'm finding the same with these Selbu socks. So yeah, I'm thinking maybe as beautiful as Skein Deer knits patterns are, I'm thinking there might be a disconnect between the way I read patterns and the way their patterns are written, and therefore this might be my last Skein Deer project. We'll see, we'll see. Like I said, there's nothing wrong. I'm not bashing the pattern at all. There's nothing wrong with it. There's just something in the way that the patterns are written and set out that somehow my brain doesn't engage with in the correct way, and I end up making all sorts of mistakes, or the fit isn't quite right for me. A paltry effort on the Selbu socks. I did do more knitting than shows, I promise. My Selbu socks are living in this lovely project bag, which I purchased from Charlie of YarnNYarns at one of the Knit Tea retreats. I believe her sister makes these. It's this lovely pinstripe with orange on the inside and grey on the outside. Okay, so the project that took up the majority of my making time in April was a project that I picked out after rolling the dice. I picked the prompt to work on something that used double knit yarn, and I popped that prompt in my little sort of deck of cards because a lot of the projects that I work on end up being sort of 4-ply or fingering weight, however you like to refer to that weight of yarn, and so I thought it might encourage me to make use of some of the other yarns that I've got in my stash or some of the other projects that I've got on my needles. And so when that prompt came up, I decided to pick up a baby blanket project that I started for my nephew. My nephew was born last October, And about a month or so, maybe not even that, before his due date, my sister asked if I could make a blanket with a card design on it. And I started the project, and then baby came along and Christmas came along and other things got in the way, and I never really progressed that project. So my nephew's now 6 months old, and I thought it was kind of now or never for that project. So pretty much all of my knitting time went into finishing this blanket. And I'm not going to be able to show you in this frame, so I'll try and get a shot of me standing up sharing the whole blanket. But it's pretty much finished, like the knitting part of this is finished. So the pattern is Vroom Vroom Beep Beep, which is a pattern by Vicky Bird Designs. It's intarsia, and you knit strips of these cars, so you're only ever working on about 50 stitches at a time until you get to the border, which is quite nice. Last month when I got this out for the making plans video, I thought the pattern advised you to knit 5 strips, but it actually says to knit 4 strips, which was a little bit of a relief to me because each one of these cars, including tackling all of the ends that you get on the back, took me about 2 hours to knit, so it was an evening's worth of knitting. Then once you've knit the strips, you join them with mattress stitch, so you can probably see the sort of column here on the back. It's fairly seamless on the front. So anyway, yes, I have finished this blanket, including the knitted borders. The one thing that I am planning on doing is adding a fleece backing to this blanket. There was a lot of ends to weave in, a lot of ends to deal with, and I'm not the neatest of finishers. I'm not horrendous, but there was a lot to tackle here, and so I would like to just put a fleece backing on this to kind of cover the inner workings. So at the very end of last month, I popped into Cardiff and I went to the market there, and I found this bright blue sort of polar fleece material. I didn't have a chance before our family visitors arrived to do anything with this, but my plan is just to sew a layer of this blue fleece onto the back, and then the blanket will be finished. I used a mixture of Sirdar Snuggly 100% acrylic yarns, and also a couple of colours of Debbie Bliss Baby Cashmerino. The orange car was a Baby Cashmerino, and there's some yellow in the centre of these wheels that was also the Baby Cashmerino. I spent a lot of my time last month working on that blanket. I felt like it was very much now or never for that blanket. With my nephew now being 6 months old, I think my sister will still get some use out of that, even if it's just as a sort of play mat in the garden over the summer. But if I'd left it much longer, I feel like the project would have become a little bit redundant. And that was the project, as I mentioned earlier, that really had me realising how much I crave having lots of works in progress on the needles, because towards the end of that it just felt like such a slog to get it finished, which was nothing to do with the pattern or the knitting itself. I just started kind of resenting having to work on that all the time to the exclusion of my other projects. As you can see from the other things that I've shown you, and I've still got I think 2 more projects to share, I didn't work on that exclusively, but that was the thing that I really worked on for 3.5 weeks out of the 4 of last month. And yeah, it definitely taught me that to enjoy my knitting process I need to switch between things, and it's just reinforced that the approach that I use really suits me well. I know it wouldn't be for everyone, but I really need that variety, and it really doesn't matter to me whether a project takes much longer because I'm not working exclusively on it. I just enjoy my knitting a lot more when I'm not solely focused on one thing. But it's done now, more or less, apart from the backing. And it was a nice pattern. You know, the enjoyment got taken away a little bit towards the end, but that was just because of the way that I was knitting. But nothing to do with the pattern or the yarns. They were nice to work with. And I hope in a couple of weeks' time, I hope to sew that backing on, maybe this weekend. And then I'll get it sent off to my sister. So I hope my little nephew Ruben will enjoy his auntie made blanket. Just want to give a little plug for the project bag that I used for that blanket, which is one of the Emma Ball sheep in sweater project bags, and I stock these in the shop. And these project bags are deceptive in their size. They're pretty good value. I think they're less than £15, and I've just squeezed my blanket back in there along with all of the leftover yarn, and there's still kind of room in the top for more. So let me get these out. I've got all of this leftover yarn plus the blanket, and there is still kind of room to add a little bit more. So I really enjoy those project bags, and I've got loads of different designs of those available over in the Yarn and Yarn shop if you want to treat yourself. 2 more projects to share, so let's get on with that. The first one, in last month's making plans video, I asked the lovely YouTube community to decide a project for me, and I asked you to pick between me working on my oldest work in progress or for me to cast on something new, and the vote ended up being cast on something new. You all led me astray. So I picked a skein of yarn from my self-destructing yarn basket. Again, if you're new to the channel, there's a video about that up. If you search the channel, you can find out what on earth I'm talking about when I refer to my self-destructing yarns. There'll be another video coming on that soon because my year time frame for that little project is up. Anyway, I picked this yarn for my self-destructing yarn basket, which is a yarn from Bird Street Yarns. This is one of their old labels, it's one of their older skeins. It's the Fallen Hard colourway, 75/25 merino nylon. And I decided to cast myself on a pair of fingerless mitts from this yarn. I wanted a small project that I'd hoped that I might get finished in the month. This was my kind of put by my desk project and work on it as and when I was doing video editing and things like that. And I managed to almost finish my first mitt. I've got all of the ends, you can see, hanging out, waiting to be finished. I decided to liven this up a little bit. It's a lovely grey yarn with these pops of speckles. I decided I wanted to put a little bit of contrast. So I've picked this skein of Cascade Heritage from my stash. And I put a little bit of colour around the cuff and the top of each finger. I managed to finish the first mitt. I've been really enjoying wearing the Varia mitts that I made, or I finished, in December. Those are fingerless glove, no, those are more like fingerless mitts. I should call this a fingerless glove really, shouldn't I? Because it does have separate fingers. My Varia is a fingerless mitt because all of this section is kind of one piece. I've been enjoying wearing those a lot since I finished them, and I thought it'd be fun to have a couple more pairs that I could swap between. And also I wanted to experiment with this sort of pair where I do add some fingers. This is a free pattern over on Ravelry. I've forgotten what it's called, just bear with me 1 second, I shall look it up. I think it's Koigu. And I came across this pattern thanks to the lovely ladies of the Woolen Wishes podcast. If you don't watch that podcast, I can highly recommend it. I think, if I'm remembering rightly, there's sort of 2 presenters for that and their sister-in-laws, and it's a lot of fun to watch their videos. So I shall link them below. I know they've got quite a few viewers, so you may already be aware of them, but just in case. And I found this pattern because one of the hosts of that podcast knitted a pair from her handspun, and I thought that is just the ticket, just the thing I'm looking for. And it's the Koigu fingerless gloves by Astrante, and it's a free pattern. So I finished the first glove and I'm a good way into the second. So I'm probably going to be working on this in May. This is probably the project that I've got that's closest to being finished, and that was one of the prompts that I rolled in my May making plans. Then my final project to share with you is the one that was picked for me by our lovely community member Lynn. Each month I'm now adding an extra element to my making plans video by asking someone in our community to pick a project for me, and that person has completely free reign. They could choose something for my works in progress list that they'd like to see me progress, and they can choose an entirely brand new project for me to make. I really don't mind. But last month it was Lynn's turn to pick for me, and Lynn asked me to work on my heptagon time shawl, which I'm making from handspun yarn. If I hadn't been concentrating on that baby blanket, I know I would have made a lot more progress on this because it's such a fun knit. This is giving me all of the sort of Halloween vibes with this really, really bright sort of neon green in here, this highlighter green, paired with the purples and the black. But when I picked this project up at the beginning of the month, I was down here where my marker is. So I've added a good few inches onto this project. Not as many as I would have liked. As I say, that baby blanket took up so much of my time. But I loved working on this. It's just a real joy of a project because I'm not following any kind of rigid recipe or plan when I'm changing in my colours. I'm just swapping them as and when I want to. I am of course following the pattern, which is the heptagon time shawl, and I will link the details for that pattern below. But it's a very free pattern in terms of there's a several row repeat where you're getting your sort of increases coming in, and other than that it's just garter stitch, and you can play with it as much as you want. You can use any weight of yarn that you want, just match your needle size up so you get a fabric that you like, and then you can just play. So this was another one of my 12 cast-ons, and I'm using some yarns that I spun up from some art bats that were in my stash and I didn't really know what to do with them, and I paired that with some more hand spun, that bright highlighter colour, and also some black. Yeah, it's just like pure playtime when I work on this project. So thank you so much for picking this one for me, Lynn. I had lots of fun when I did have the opportunity to knit on it. I wish I'd had a little bit more time to work on it a bit more, but it wasn't to be. So that's going to go back into my whips pile for a while until I get the opportunity to play with it again. But this, adding a couple of rows here and there while I was, as a distraction from slogging through that baby blanket, was the perfect tonic that I needed. So thank you so much, Lynn, for giving me that choice and for allowing me that little bit of breathing space from the blanket. Okay, that is everything that I worked on during the month of April. I know there was a lot of projects, and many of them didn't really have a huge amount of progress on them. That baby blanket monopolised a lot of my time, but hopefully you enjoyed seeing all of those projects again. And it was nice to have my shawl and my baby blanket finished. It's nice to get 2 more projects off the needles, or nearly off the needles. Baby blanket project is still listed as a work in progress on my Ravelry, and I'm going to keep it that way until I put the backing on. Otherwise I might just forget to do that final step and all that effort will be in vain. I need to get that finished. Okay, so for acquisitions, I've got a few things to share with you. Not a huge amount, but a pretty good haul. I mentioned earlier in this video that we went down to Devon to visit my brother in his new home. He lives fairly close to the town of Tavistock. We went and we took my niece to the park in Tavistock by the river. It's a really lovely town. And then we had a little wander around and grabbed some lunch. And I stumbled across a knitting shop. I think it was called the Knitting Corner, although I may be remembering that incorrectly. And I had a little peek around in there. They sold a lot of commercial yarns, and I couldn't see anything sort of particularly local or anything like that. But they were very nice in there, and I felt like I wanted to support the store. So I had a wander over to their sock yarn selection, and I think they had a lot of West Yorkshire spinners, which I stock in the Yarn and Yarn shop, so I don't tend to buy that because I already have that. But they did have some King Cole zigzag, which I don't stock, so I decided to pick up a skein to support that shop. Big Top it's called. Well, my aim has been over the last couple of years to try and cast on relatively quickly with any yarn that I bring into my stash. So I've got a couple of pairs of vanilla socks on the needles at the moment, but the next time I have opportunity or need to cast on a new pair of socks, then this one will go straight onto the needles. After we'd visited that knitting shop, we had a walk round, and they've got a couple of lovely historic sort of market buildings in Tavistock, and so we had a wander in, and I found a lovely lady selling some fibre for spinning. She also had some of her own hand-spun yarns for sale, and she's called the Twisted Felter. Find her at the Twisted Felter in most places. And I couldn't resist this pack of Rolags that she had on her stand in Devon close wool. So a rare breed, sort of obviously Devon based sheep, in this lovely kind of pastel-y rainbow. So I picked those up because I wanted the sort of local fibre. It's always nice to support the rare breeds as well. Although some of the British wools aren't the softest, you know, you might not, I haven't got these out of the packet yet to know whether it's next to skin soft. I'm not super wool sensitive, so I'm sure it probably will be for me. But I always try, if I spot them, and if I have the opportunity, to pick up some of the rarer breeds just to kind of support that and keep those breeds sort of economically viable for the people that are breeding them and conserving them. And then also, couldn't resist, I am denied about this a little bit because I have my own drum carder, I can make my own bats, but I just really fell in love with this bat that she had on her stand, which is merino and bamboo. So I think the black is the merino and then the bamboo is probably these dyed streaks. And I thought that would make a really fun sort of dark yarn with some pops of colour running through it. And as I say, I am denied a bit because, you know, I could technically make this myself on my drum carder, but it's also nice to support those other small businesses. And I was chatting to the lady on the stand and she said because she's very sort of specific, very niche, those craft markets can sometimes be a little bit of hit and miss for her because, you know, she's dependent on spinners or makers, yarn crafters, to specifically wondering, you know, your average person is probably not going to buy a skein of hand spun yarn or a bat. So yeah, I was happy to support her, and so I came away with that bat and those rolags. And then of course Wonderwool, and I did a little bit of damage but not a huge amount. I've come away with some good souvenirs, but I haven't overpopulated my stash again. So let's start with Wonderwool yarn. I had a tiny little list of things that I wanted to pick up at Wonderwool, and one of them was my purchase of Cartrev yarn. This is the Flam colourway and this is their DK base. Last year, when I did make a Wonderwool vlog, I purchased a few skeins, I think 2 skeins of, not Cartrev, but Midwinter yarns. I have a colourwork pattern in mind for, and I've got a quantity of double knit fibre yarn in my stash already, and I wanted to buy some colours for the colourwork yoke. And I bought 2 skeins of Midwinter thinking that I had a skein of orange Cartrev in my stash. And then when I got home and thought about it, I realised that my orange skein of DK Cartrev I used in my Aquamiri cardigan and I didn't have it at all. So I wasn't able to cast on my project that I'd intended because I was missing a skein. So this was the one and only definite purchase that I wanted to make from Wonderwool this year. So I'm happy that I've got that, and I will be trying to cast on that project soon. I don't want to have another cast on party at the moment because I've got plenty of projects to keep me going. But as I've already mentioned, I do want to try and get in the habit of casting on with these new yarns that I bring into the house in a reasonably timely manner. So the next time I have the opportunity to cast on a bigger project, I'm going to be looking to pull out the yarns that I had for this colourwork project that I've got in mind. I made one other yarn purchase, and this was something that I saw on Nellie and Eve's Instagram before I went to the show, and I was really desperate to have a look at this yarn. And it's a limited edition that Nellie and Eve have produced. It's 100% Shetland from a flock that's local to Helen, where she lives in Wales. So it's 1 mile away. She says the flock lives 1 mile away from her studio in West Wales. This is a very light fingering weight yarn. So it's 100 grams in each skein and 440 metres. And I bought 2 skeins. Helen had a lovely jumper on at the show. I can't remember what the pattern is called. You'll find it if you go and head over to Nellie and Eve's Instagram, but it's very similar to the Love Note or the Ranunculus in that it's 4-ply yarn knit at a very loose gauge with a bit of lace kind of work. So I thought I could make something like a Ranunculus or a Love Note or the sweater that Helen had on. Or my other thought is I've got several quantities of 4-ply, like 2 skeins of 4-ply non-superwash in my stash, and I might pull those out and try for an all-over colourwork sweater, because I think 4 skeins should be enough to get me something like that. And I had one particular pattern in mind, but I will need to swatch because I've got, I think, 3 different quantities in 3 different colours that may go with this. So at some point I will end up swatching with these, deciding whether to go with the colourwork idea or whether to go with just one sort of t-shirt or top out of these 2 skeins. So yeah, I was super happy to grab these. These were not the cheapest thing, but I love Shetland wool. I love this stormy grey colourway, and yeah, I'm always happy to try and support folks that are producing locally from the things that they have nearby. It's one of the reasons I love Cartref. It's completely produced here in Wales. Always happy to add some of those things to my stash, those soulful stash acquisitions, as Sarah from Fibre Trek refers to them. So those were my yarn purchases from Wonderwool, and then onto fibre. I've got 4 fibre things to share with you. So first off, I went to visit quickly Andy and Angela from Attic Spin Dye, and I didn't get to spend too much time with them this year. I really had limited time this year between sort of catching up with everyone to sort of fly around the stalls and try and find the things that I wanted. But I did pop by, and they so kindly gifted me this beautiful skein of Hummingbird, and this is on their Wensleydale fibre base, and Wensleydale is one of my favourite fibres, so they know me too well. And it's this beautiful combination of this almost, so it looks quite turquoise on the screen, but it's almost emerald green in real life, and there's this beautiful sort of rusty brown orange, and then these deep, I would say it's a deep green, but it looks quite black. So yeah, I'm super excited to spin this up at some point soon, and I always appreciate the amazing support that I get from Andy and Angela, and yeah, they're so generous. They've gifted me a few things over the years, so yeah, too generous. Too generous. So yeah, I was super happy to receive that. Thank you so much once again to Andy and Angela. I went along to the show with a shawl project in mind that I'd like to spin for. I'm not going to say too much about it at the moment in case it doesn't come to fruition, but I will take you on the journey if it does happen. I'm going to be doing some swatching hopefully soon, in the not too distant future. So as soon as I've started my swatching, I'll talk more about it. But I was looking for 2 colours to potentially make a brioche shawl in, and the pattern calls for fingering weight yarn, 200 grams in each colour. So I was looking for sort of 200-ish grams of fibre in 2 different colours, and I knew I wanted one of them to be orange. And I came across this yarn on the Velvet Sixpence stall, and it's their Biffdale silk, which is a combination of 50% Blueface Leicester, 25% Corriedale and 25% silk. Almost exactly the colour that I was looking for. I had in mind maybe something slightly darker than this, but I had a look around, and I just couldn't see anything exactly as I'd imagined in my head, and this was the closest. So I'm going to be spinning up a little sample of this soon. I looked out for a second colour to pair with this, and I didn't really see anything that sort of jumped out at me. And then when I got home, I realised that I'm already spinning something that might be perfect. I'm not sure yet. That's why I'm going to need to swatch. So last year I combed a grey Shetland fleece, and I've been spindle spinning my way through my little combed nests. It's a slow process, which, you know, I've already mentioned. I don't mind slow projects, which is good really when it comes to fibre prep. But I'm going to ply up a little sample of my grey Shetland. I'm going to spin up, ply up a little section of this, and I'm going to do a little swatch to see if they're going to work out for the shawl that I have in mind. I managed to bump into quite a few friends, and intentionally met up with quite a few friends as well. And my lovely friend Jeanette, hi Jeanette if you're watching, had been going around the festival and bought quite a lot of different fibres, including some of this from John Arbon, one of their Wonderwool special colourways, and I can't remember what the colourway was called. I might try and look it up to see if they've still got a record of it on their social medias or on their website, but you can probably tell why I couldn't resist this. And it just said it's British wool, so I don't know what's in it. But knowing the sorts of fibres that John Arbon works with, it's probably going to be Exmoor Blueface, swart balls, things like that. So yeah, I got myself 200 grams of this. So yeah, that was my John Arbon purchase. And then finally, yes, we're at finally, I bought this little sample of YarnNYarns, and it's fleece. So for you to kind of prepare yourself. And actually, I've bought this with the idea that I might gift it to someone. I need to get in touch with that person to see if they're interested, but if not, I shall prepare this myself. I've worked with YarnNYarns in the past, but I've always worked from prepped fibre, so it will be quite interesting to kind of comb this or card this up myself if the person that I thought I might gift it to is not interested. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that one, but I thought I would mention it as I did purchase it at Wonderwall. Right, we have reached the end. I have no idea how long this is going to be because I have sort of paused to swap my projects out and go and collect things. I feel like it could be quite a long one. There was lots of projects to share and a fair few acquisitions as well. So thank you so much if you stuck with me till the end. Let me know what you worked on in April. I'm getting the months all confused in my mind. This year is whizzing past so quickly. Did you finish anything? Did you significantly progress any of your works in progress? Did you cast on something new? Let me know all of the things in the comments below. I love to hear from you. I'm still, I think, a little bit behind in catching up with my YouTube comments. It's been a lovely but really busy start to my May with family over and a little break away. So yeah, I'm so behind with everything, but I will catch up soon. So yeah, do leave me a comment. I will reply to you as soon as I'm able to. I love to be inspired by what you're making and hear about the things that you finished, or the things that you're excited to cast on, or the things that are bringing you joy as you work through them. I will be back here soon with some more making content, so I hope you will join me for the next video. Until we do get to spend time together again, I hope you get to do some of the things that you enjoy. Great big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now. Bye.